that is the part that needs to end, not your life. So there's this meme that I love. It says transformation equals liberation plus loss. Nobody includes the loss part. It's just liberation because our country's like glitzy and glammy and we only have fun. But the truth is, with every transformation, there's loss. Even losing like bad versions of ourselves is a loss. Yes, today I had a conversation with someone who talks about suicide way too much. And I said to her, you just don't want this life anymore, which I also don't want for you. But like that is the part that needs to end, not your life. So like, let's talk about the future and your potential and what we do want to show up for in life and what we do want from our lives, because she's just going in circles. Of course, she's unhappy. She's barking up all the wrong trees and upset that she's not getting anything from them. But then she tells me that she wants to end her life. And I'm like, no, it's the way that you're living your life that needs to end. Most people that are suicidal want their life as it is to end because it needs to.
Hi, I'm Erica.
And I'm Sean.
And we are the Blanchards. This podcast is created to be a safe place where we discuss topics regarding faith, love, family, marriage,
and everything in between through the perspective of an interracial blended couple focused on ministry
and mental health. No topic is off limits. We're about to have adult conversation through the eyes of a Latina scholar, life coach, mother, and wife.
Along with the perspective of a Black king, engineer, entrepreneur, father, and husband. We're about to take brown and Black excellence to a whole new level.
Family Unlocked starts now. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Family Unlocked.
Family Unlocked. Hello, hello, hello.
And I have my wonderful friend, this girl, this woman, this psychologist. She is one of my dearest friends. I think I met her at the most I needed you in the moment that I met you. I was going to school and I wasn't sure if I was going to continue doing what I was doing because we worked at a agency that was, I just didn't feel like I had like meaning there. It was a challenging place. But anyway, she is wonderful. She's encouraged me to continue my education. She is a Latina. She is a scholar. She is wonderful. She is a psychologist and a very dear friend of mine. And her name is Dr. Emilia Ramirez.
Yay! Yay! Thank you. Thank you for my intro.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us.
Totally.
I love speaking with you because I feel like you're so relatable. And you can break down so many challenges that a lot of, especially females, face, just life in general. And so I feel like you would give such a good perspective and such a well-rounded viewpoint on what many of us struggle with. And so that's why I'm really, really, really thrilled that you're here. And I thank you so much for being a part of this.
I am happy to be here.
Thank you. So we can start with how we met.
She didn't want to be my friend. That's how we met.
I didn't want to be anybody's friend. Let's make that very clear. I'm very particular on who I call friend.
But I wore you down.
You did. I was really, I really loved your technique with clients. And I think the most important part is clients didn't feel like clients. They felt like they were there not as a friend, but they were there as a person that was beyond needing a service.
Like
they were, yeah, it felt like a community. And I was drawn to you because I felt like I could learn those techniques because it's so book-based, some of these organizations, and I'm not. So getting to meet with you and work with you with clients, it felt like a meaningful just presence with clients.
Yeah, because usually it's so formulaic, it doesn't feel really human.
Yeah, exactly. Human.
Yeah.
So yeah, we met there.
And then I told you I loved you all the time. And then I wore you down and now we're friends.
Why?
Yeah.
just stop. But yeah, I one of the most memorable times I had with her is when I met her, when they introduced me to her, she had the same name as my old boss that I had just left the job. And I was like, oh, great, right? She's following me. This person's following me. This name I can never get rid of. But she spoke with a British accent, like super British. And I thought, oh my God. And I love British accents. And she was speaking in this accent. And I was like, oh, I love her. And then the next time I saw her, she didn't have it. And I was like, wow, she acclimated quickly.
I can turn it on and off, but sometimes I can't turn it off once I turn it on.
It was shocking. I was like, is that the same person? And then the next time I saw her, she was speaking Spanish. And I was like, what the? This is a chameleon. I was like, oh my God, I'd never seen anything so strange, but
surprising.
Yeah. So
peculiar.
Yeah. Peculiar. If that teaches us anything about you, it's like how easy you are and how flexible and soft and just you and authentic. You're just enjoying.
This is the goal. It's a hard one, but it is the goal.
Okay. So for me, I thought this would be a really good subject to talk with you about. And one of the important subjects I find as a mom, as a wife, just as a human, is the fear of death. And as a Christian, as a person of faith, it's something that's like a double-edged sword, right? It's taboo in a sense to talk about the fear of death because we're not supposed to be afraid. This is when, it's going to happen, but this is when our faith comes in because we're supposed to think a certain way. And I battled a lot with that because after I turned 40, I started to get really afraid of death, like the inevitable death process and my children not having me, my husband not having me. And it would cause such a stir in my body, like physiologically, I was responding with anxiety and just fear out of my sleep. And just not the uncertainty of what can and cannot happen. What is it going to look like? Is my family prepared? It created that fear. And I remember talking to you one time on the phone, and I told you, and actually we had a coworker pass away, and I wouldn't say she died. I said, oh, she's no longer with us. And you were like, she died. You can say die. And I was like, oh, stop saying that. And you're like, what? That's what happened. And that really made me look at it like, okay, maybe what am I afraid of? So I thought this was a really good topic.
It is a good topic.
Because I don't think a lot of people talk about it.
No, our culture doesn't want us to talk about it.
And why do you think that is?
I think because we're a new culture. Like in India, where it's thousands of years old, they bring the body out for 3 days to look at. And here we would never do that. Like we have a viewing and it's all contrived and very sterile. But so the way we deal with things in our society is pretend like they're not real. Right. So we pretend like we're not going to die.
But what do you think the purpose is? Is just to avoid it, or
because we don't like to have uncomfortable conversations? We want everything to be comfortable. And if it's not comfortable, then I'll drink a couple of beers until I'm comfortable, or take some pills until I'm comfortable.
I just want to interject for a quick second because I don't know if people actually know your background. Would you briefly be able just to introduce, like, okay, I'm Dr. Mimi, I have this and that, so that people can kind of like, oh, okay,
I see why
yeah.
So my name is Dr. Amelia Ramirez, but I go by Mimi. I have a PsyD, so my title is Doctor of Psychology in Clinical Psychology and a Master's and a Bachelor's in Psychology. Forever psychology.
I love it.
Yeah. And I was a professor for a minute. I did a lot of private practice. I'm in private practice now. And but I was in social services for like 10 years.
So I just wanted to kind of introduce the audience to that so that they know that this conversation is we're not just randomly talking about it, but we actually have an expert in this area. So, okay, please continue.
You said that you had some training
in death.
And speaking about death, and
I went to a seminar once where Deepak Chopra talked about death, and the title was Death is Necessary for Life. And it was so good. Like one of the things he said was if our stomach lining didn't repair itself every couple of days, we would die. But our stomach lining has to die for it to be reborn. Right. And so then he just kind of broke down stuff and he talked about the aversion that we have to talking about death in the West, but it's here. Like we are specifically crippled when talking about it here. So, and then my clinical supervisor, she believed that she could leave her body and she knew things about the afterlife and she wanted to write a book about it, but she didn't want people to think she was crazy. So she pitched it to me because I was from California and she was from small town Texas. And then during the pandemic, she died. And I told her daughters that nobody had ever prepared me for their death more. And my feeling was she belongs everywhere, not just in Texas, because the whole universe needs her. Because she's such an amazing person. So yeah, so she trained me a lot in like being okay with the spiritual, unknown, rule breaking mysticism that death is, I believe. I talked about it today with somebody who aborted a child. And I said, do you believe the child's with you though? She said, I do. I was like, I do too. And do you think you're going to see the child eventually? She said, yeah, I do. And I was like, yeah, I really believe that. I'm not just saying it to make you feel better. Like I've developed these beliefs and that's what I believe is the truth. And we had a pivotal moment because I told her, because she said I was selfish and that's why I chose to end the life. And I said, you didn't have 100% commitment that that child was going to have two parents because half of the parents weren't sure about what to do. You were in it. So you made a choice because your baby wasn't going to be 100% parented. That's why you made the choice. And then she just started crying because I was like, that was a decision made out of love, not out of selfishness. I really believe that.
And I was going to say something, and just to because I know that we're kind of mainly talking about like humanity in terms of when you think of death, but death is a part of life in general in terms of like the universe. So if you look at it from a scientific perspective, which is kind of, you know, my nerd where I nerd out, everything, you need things to die in order for things to be reborn, right? In terms of like when stars, when they die, some scientists believe that we are made up of stardust, right? Basically stars that have exploded and whatnot, and then they are created, and we are created based off of the particles and things like that. So there is a flow in the universe that you need in order to do it. So for instance, when people pass away or they're buried in the ground, they decay, but that is used to fertilize, life in the ground. So there is a purpose for it. The fear of it is you understand it because we only know our physical being. So we're, at least, and I can only speak for myself, is more of the unknown, but also is there pain involved, also the way, things like that. And I think that's where a lot of the fear. And then you have the faith base who embraces, you know, your faith and like, okay, you'll be in heaven, and and it's with Christianity, you'll be in heaven with Jesus, you'll live in a mansion with many rooms. If you look at Islamic belief, they'll be like, you have many wives, you have all these things about it, but there still is a level of fear because it's physical absence. So that, just wanted to kind of interject that in the conversation. Please continue.
Well, I mean,
I like that.
Well, I think that's a really good perspective, right? To look at it and your faith, the way you said something that the professor that passed away, that your friend, there was a phrase that you said, and it was about death.
So she had a night where she went to sleep and left her body and then was in a place that wasn't hell, but the people that were there thought it was hell. And her father-in-law was there. And she woke up the next day in distress and didn't want to tell her husband, I just dreamed your father was in hell. So she just kept it to herself. And then she went to sleep again, tried to not go to sleep, fell asleep, went back to this place, accompanied her father-in-law through a tunnel. She said, she described it like you could hear it, you could see it. Gets to the end, no, she can't continue. He goes, she wakes up to the phone ringing that her father-in-law had just passed away. Wow, right? And then from that, she was just like, he didn't have to be there and he thought he did. And so her job was to move him on. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so then she wanted to write a book to tell people, like, we don't have to be sad. Like, our loved ones are here in this place where they're waiting for you. and you'll be with them eventually, because the majority of our pain, I think, as people is disconnection. I mean, that's research based, not my opinion. So the total disconnection, the ultimate disconnection is death, if you believe that's the end. But if you believe it's a transformation, which I do, and a metamorphosis, then you become something greater than what you were, hopefully.
So is it more like energy, or is
Yeah,
it
well, like
just
energy doesn't die, right?
Yeah.
I say that to people all the time. Like when
Yeah.
people say they're atheists, I'm like, but if energy doesn't die, then where does the energy that's inside of you go? It has to go somewhere. Yeah. So I think it's because we don't have the understanding to make sense of it with the brains that we have. But I think that we can touch it when we talk about spiritual stuff, but lots of people don't want to talk about that either. And so death and spiritual stuff are two like kind of taboo topics unless you're amongst friends. So then you end up just feeling the pain of separation. And it's a tragedy. Like what Dr. D wanted to do was showcase that it wasn't that way.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head, because my son, the baby, he has this fear of death where he's waking up out of his slumber, like, and crying and scared. And I felt like what I went through it happened during when I turned 40, the fear I had of dying, it allowed me to connect with my son, because not even a year later, he started to get afraid. So I felt like I was prepared. So me educating him about death and how beautiful it is at the end, and I'll be there waiting for you, and all these beautiful things, right? It calms him. So I want to continue that narrative, that conversation. I don't want him to be afraid. And I feel that he's afraid of, when I ask him, what are you afraid of? He says, I'm afraid of leaving my beautiful life and not having you guys anymore. And I thought, okay, if we continue to speak with him and not have him sit in that fear, that would kind of alleviate some of his concerns, right, about death, or at least give him some resources, right? And then for me, what I was just talking to Sean about is what finally calmed me was that I have 2 babies in heaven and that I get to meet them. And that makes me look forward to what's next, and I'm like, I mean, I don't want to say I'm super excited, about it, because I want to make sure my family is ready. I don't think you can prepare too much for, or like really prepare for the a death of a parent or a child or anything like that. But just knowing, okay, that my kids know this is inevitable. My husband and I both know one of us will not have the other. And what that's going to look like, rather than pretending it's not going to happen. And I think also watching our parents, Sean's dad passed away, watching his mom has Alzheimer's. So watching her have this slow death kind of thing. And then my grandma, it's been, it allows you to see that this is part of life, right? Rather than, oh, I didn't know this person, or they're dying, let me go over here, it's uncomfortable. So like, what do you think is a good idea? How do you have those conversations?
Glennon Doyle says grief is the price tag that you paid the price for love, or the receipt that you paid the price for love, right? And so that's what I would say to your kid. Like, you're scared because you have something to lose, but then you're lucky that you have something to lose, Like most people can't even be vulnerable enough to love somebody for fear of losing them, right? So they don't have to have that price of grief. And so, I mean, yeah, you can pretend, engineer, and protect your heart, but Brene Brown says we can't do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you might as well go all in,
Yeah.
right? Go all in and like, and I mean, I think gratitude would probably be the antidote for that. Of just like, I'm grateful that I have a family that I love, that I'm not running away from, that I don't hate, that I'm not talking about in therapy, right? Like that I have a life that I think is beautiful and worth living. So many people don't have that. I would say the majority of people don't have that. And so, yeah, to be so lucky that you get to love so hard, and just kind of holding space for that, rather than what if it's gone?
Yeah.
Right? Because nothing is guaranteed ever. We just have we pretend it is, but it's not. But
Yeah, that makes sense because I feel like I started to get really afraid of death after I experienced so much love with him
mm-hmm,
because I never even thought about it. Like, oh, well,
mm-hmm.
lights
Yeah.
out, you know? Like,
Yeah.
but then I was like, my God.
When you have something to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much scarier.
Yeah. Well, when I have conversations with him, I try to help him focus on the present, right? Meaning, and I'll say stuff like that, today is a gift, right? That's why they call it the present, right? It's a gift. It's a gift from God, right? And the reason why is not to disregard or to say, this, what you're feeling isn't valid and isn't right, but don't focus on that. Don't allow that to be your focus. Allow your focus to be on what's today. There's a scripture that says, don't worry about tomorrow, right? For tomorrow has its own, issues. It has its own problems. So if you can learn to be in the moment today and appreciate that,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's more important. And if you just look at it if you look at it from a spiritual standpoint, it's more along the lines of just appreciate the here and now because time is fleeting, right? You're born and on. They say as soon as you're born, that's the day that you start to die, right? It's as soon as you're born, right? Because it's now the clock is on. So you're learning to appreciate these moments. And I think life is a summation of moments, right? And that's what it is that you remember the ones who are here, and then the ones who once you leave, that's at least that's what you can take away with you before you transcend to this next level is moments. I can live in those moments. A lot of people say that when a person passes away, they kind of relive their life, right? You just all of a sudden just kind of go through all these things. And so for Gianni, I try to help him focus on just the moment. I can't promise that you won't have it again. You won't get scared. You won't do anything like that. But if you can learn to appreciate these moments, if you can learn to, love on mom as much as possible, love on brother, love on dad as much as possible, I think that can help with it. But I think knowledge is also important. Having books about heaven, like heaven is not a scary thing, talking to them about that, allowing them to express their fears and not say, boy, stop tripping. I think those are all great coping mechanisms to help him to be able to, deal with it because he still is trying to figure it out.
I think that's a really good idea. I heard someone say yesterday, anxiety is entirely forward and future driven. And that once you start having anxiety, you're starting to think about the future. And so the antidote would be the present. And then past is guilt. Future, anxiety, past, guilt. But the moment now, like now I'm a healthy body and my mom's healthy and my dad's healthy and we are not struggling for our next meal and we get to live life loud.
You know what I mean? I think it's hard, and it's hard to get to that point when you're inundated with everything else. You are bombarded with what's happening, especially if you look at the news, especially if you're on social media. There's always a comparison. We just had a tragedy in Louisiana and things like that. So you're inundated with these things, and of course you're going to have fear. Of course you're going to be scared. Of course you're going to be worried. But we also have to remember, like you just shared a time, if you were so lucky to be with your family for the holidays, those are the moments of your dog tired, you're, waking people up early in the morning. Your kids are excited. They're opening the gifts. They're happy. Those are the moments that you hold on to, that you cherish, and that's kind of what I try to, live by and try to teach my kids that. It's just like be able to appreciate these moments and it can help.
You said something really important. Like I see so many clients that are sick and they're dying, and like I seen a client on a Thursday. She passed away on Sunday. I had no idea. We didn't know she was that sick. But she got sepsis right when we were like the next day. And for me to know, like just in a matter of minutes, seconds, it could be over. And I decided I had to purposely like look at things and want to be with Sean, want to be with my kids, not to fight. Life is so short, but it's hard to not get stuck in that, like, oh my God, like this is awful. And you watch children like like some of my kids are on hospice. And you just hope and pray that you will never experience that as a parent, but you still want to support the other parent.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a scary place because you're just afraid of that process because it's painful. You see the pain. And I think that's what we kind of not want, not just being uncomfortable, but like not wanting that pain.
For those who have loved ones who are sick or who have been hurt or critically injured or something like that, they have the pain of watching and the pain of being helpless. You know what I mean? I mean, we know, unfortunately, you know, we know people who've lost children tragically through the illness or otherwise. And you can't imagine the helpless feeling that you feel. Right. And so, you know, grief is real. Right. It's real because, like you said, it's love. You love hard. You give your all to that person, especially if you're a parent. You give your all to your children. And I think most society live by this, you know, moniker of my kids should be burying me, not me burying my kids, right? And so when it's the reverse, it's hard to be able to fathom that. And then it questions faith, and it questions everything else that you understand about life. You know what I mean? And so what would you say, I'll call you Dr. Mimi. Dr. Mimi, what would you say to someone who has experienced such grief like that, like whether it's losing a child or losing a spouse? I think those are tied. Yeah. Because I think when it comes to parents, yes, you know, parents are important, but I feel like, I don't know, it's just something about the loss of a child, the loss of a spouse that cuts really, really deep. So I just wanted to know what kind of advice or just experience would you give to someone who's dealing with that currently?
I had a client who lost her kid. He just graduated from college. I think he was like 21. And he was hit by a car on New Year's Eve. And so she was not into it, like into therapy. She wasn't into any of it. And she was really a really hard case. One of the things that I started talking to her about was, I want this to be a safe space for you to talk about the things that other people might deem crazy, because I'm not going to deem it as crazy. Like, this is a good place for you just to like talk it out and explore, because I do think the disconnection part is what messes people up so much. And so, and which is, I don't believe it's real. I believe that's an illusion, but it creates so much pain. And so I started asking her, and she was not like a frou-frou kind of person, like not the kind of person you'd ever expect to have some wild conversation with me. But I was like, look, I'm going to give you some examples. And I gave her some examples. She said, well, yesterday the song came on just randomly on the radio, and it was just too much. Like, it felt like him. And I was like, ooh, tell me about that. And then she told me about it. And like, she wouldn't even share that with her husband, right? Like, this is the person that she's the most intimately connected to, because it's not allowed to talk about stuff that is crazy.
Yeah.
People would rather be criminal than crazy, statistically, right?
Oh my God.
And so,
So good.
So we kept having those conversations and just being open to it. And like, are you open to like him being near you, or him influencing you, or people say lights flickering, you know, like,
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, energy, right? Yeah. Energy. And so I believe that the more we allow ourselves to be untethered with our thinking, then we can have like more understanding through our visceral, intuitive, spiritual selves, you know? And so I tell people like, somebody said the other day, well, I used to always tell this person when I achieve something, and now I can't do that anymore. I was like, yeah, you can. You can do it in your head, or you can do it out loud. You can leave a voice message if it feels more real. But we somehow decide, well, the rules are now they don't apply anymore because the person's not here. But I think they who have passed on from this world are more attuned to the rules than we will ever be while we're here. And so it's kind of egoic to say like, oh, well, they couldn't affect me or touch me or be with me or influence me or flicker the lights. But I believe, I said this to somebody yesterday, I said, if there's not a better place after this planet, I give up on justice, because I believe that this is like a development process to prepare us for the spiritual world. I there's too much evidence for that to not be
Mhm.
the case. And so, but if you were part of a certain religion, then your religion talks about it in a certain way. And if you're not, then you have nothing to talk about it. And you better not talk about it or you're going to be looked at like you're crazy because what do you believe in ghosts? Like, so I think it's crazier not to believe that there's another world that we go to and that we ascend to and that there's people there that are rooting us on. And that we will be connected with again. And I think that if we're open to being connected to them, then they can be more connected to us. But if you decide that that's not the case, then you'll continue to perpetuate a reality of disconnection, which is just, I don't think that's the right way to go.
How can you convince them to move on,
Well,
to keep living
yeah.
after this individual has left? Because what if they have more children, or what if there's
She has,
yeah
she has it. So one of my first conversations with her was, do you feel like if you were healed or okay or past the trauma, that you would be doing a disservice to your child, right? Like if I'm no longer in pain, that means I'm not really missing you as much as I should or love you as much as I should. Like you have to have permission to grief is a process. It doesn't have like a course, but it definitely has an end date. You'll never stop missing the person, but you won't be in a state of trauma. In her case, it was trauma because he was murdered. And so there was trauma and grief both at the same time. But I said, once you get past the trauma, the grief won't last forever. It'll run its course. You will have a normal life again. And that's like a healing thing, not an abandonment of love thing. That's, the trauma will wear off and the shock will wear off. And then you'll cry all the time. And that's okay. And just normalize feeling pain and you'll get through it. But I always say the worst thing that you can do is not let any of that happen and try to bottle up all the pain and pretend like it's not real or that you should be stronger, So, so yeah, in this particular story, she was starting to open up and then some like family came into town and then she didn't come back. So, but I think it's partly because I told her this is going to be an uphill journey. You're not going to like it, but you're going to get through it and to the other side and you won't be in a state of constant pain anymore. So like and also like taking any kind of support from your community. And also this, I tell anybody who's recently lost somebody, just tell people what has happened. Tell the person at Starbucks, tell the person at the gas station. Because when my grandfather died, my dad went into Starbucks and he came back to the car and he was like, I was an ass in there. And I was like, what happened? He's like, I just was really socially weird. And then I said, if you just tell people my dad just died, those 4 words, then people will show up in a way that you might not expect, but they always do. Like people will be like, oh my gosh, it's okay. And understand immediately that your brain's not functioning because it's overloaded with pain.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, but what we end up doing is just running with that until we outrun it and go back to work and fill up our list of things to do so that we don't have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually it'll go away. But that's not what happens. What ends up happening is one time somebody told me I got lost driving home. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty normal for grief. She said, I lived there for 27 years. So I was like, still normal. Yeah, because you're overloaded. But people don't understand any of that. And they just, I'm crazy, or I have to keep this bottled up and not share it with anybody, which is the worst thing that you can do.
Now, what's the balance of someone who now identifies with the death of a loved one, meaning not moving past it? Like it has to be the constant conversation because does that make sense? Like they identify with the death of this important person in their life.
Yeah, when I worked in a rehab facility, I worked with a woman who had lost her husband of 50 years. She could not snap out of it. She was in it. And I would have conversations with, what would he want for you? Did he love you? Yes. Did he love you a lot? Yes. Would he want you to be suffering and sad for the rest of your life? No. And then like flip that story upside down. What would he want from you? What would he want for your life? Like, how would he want you to change it? What are the things that you still have to do? Can we do them again? And I saw her get some levity in the time that I worked with her. And then she graduated and went home. So I don't know what happened to her afterwards, but she was lamenting too much to the point that it was, I mean, if you continue to think a negative thought over and over again, you're going to be permanently uncomfortable and unhappy.
Yeah.
Stuck, right? You're
Stuck.
stuck in that trauma
For
and
sure.
that sadness.
She was
and that-
stuck. She was just like really keeping herself alive, but barely. You know, just like I think if she could have opted out, she would have just taken it. Yeah. Just so much pain. But then again, how wonderful that you love something so much. Like, oh my God, 50 years with one human being that you love so much. Like, what a beautiful story that we're completely missing when we just focus on the loss. And I mean, if it was me, I'm sure I'd have a different experience. But I also think that whenever people die, I've lost 2 clients to suicide, and the second one really messed me up. And there's in that experience, I noticed that there's kind of like a little bit of a crazy fire that comes from grief that's can be very motivating, inspiring, and transformative. And so, and I've talked to lots of people that have gone through grief, and I'm like, there's this crazy edge because you don't care about anything anymore. You become so powerful. And if you're too locked up in your pain, you don't realize that you have so much power, right? Like this is the other side of grief. And so like, if you really break it down, it's extraordinary and magical. And you could compare it to like birth, right? But we don't have all the pieces. So we're like, meh, let's not look at it.
Yeah. But it doesn't follow a certain
rules.
Yeah. Because I think about like that saying, we're supposed to bury our children. That's a saying that's really, I remember when I heard that, I was like, who said that? Because that's not promised to us. That's not, do you know what I mean? Like that just sets us up for a disgrace, like a disappointment when something happens that's out of our control. So,
which most things are out of our control.
Right. So for me, when I flip that, like, I really hope that doesn't happen. I hope I don't lose my husband young and we still have so much life to live because I want to experience this life with him. I want my kids to experience life with me. And hopefully, you know, when I pass on that they are understanding of it, they're settled in their life and they know that this is part of the process and it won't affect them so much. But I know the love that we have is so deep that it's gonna hurt, you know, but they understand it and they're in a way okay with it, right? This is part of life. And that's when I flipped it. No one told me how long I'm gonna have these kids or, you know, so I'm gonna live life with them. And so when our kids, 2 of our boys were struggling at one part of their life, I told them, if anything were to happen where you know, it's keep them on a machine or they have to go, I'm selfish. Guess where you're going to be on a machine, you know, because I'm not ready for that. I still want to live life with you at whatever capacity that is because I'm not ready for that. And for me, it was like, so you choose, like, you're either going to stop or you're going to, you know, change your way. There's something we have to do, or you're prepared to be a vegetable because that's what's going to happen. I'm not pulling anything. You know? So, and that like gave me a sense of control, but it also woke him up like, oh, wait, oh man, I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
Right.
Serious.
Yeah. So I think that's what gave me the kind of like power back because I've watched people who, you know, caretakers of mine, without being specific of who they are, kind of weaponize death, right? Like, right, fine, I'll just kill myself. And what are you going to do? And so for me, death was just like, oh, you know, I was never afraid of it because it was like, I don't even know how to explain it. Always, it was a weapon all the time, you know, and you're constantly hearing that, right? Life is so horrible. You know, you never get ahead in life, and I'd rather be dead, and you know, so when I think that's where the fear came for me all of a sudden because I had such a beautiful life. Yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute, you know, like, what is this going to look like? So it's interesting how just perspective and experience and talking about it can change the dynamic of your relationship with death. and life, really, if you
Mhm.
think about it.
Hmm. I think like one of the biggest tragedies that nobody talks about is that some people engineer their entire life to never feel that vulnerable for fear of losing it, not even feel the love, you know? Like that's so sad. There's so many people out there that are like that. So many. And just no, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna like I'm a rock, I'm an island, right? Like Paul Simon, like just I won't let anybody in so that I can't be disappointed when you're gone or lost or die.
But
So
what a loss of life.
Yeah.
100%. But it happens so much.
So much.
Mhm.
We were just, I was like, I've never seen so many toxic relationships during like, the, like as you get older, the dependency on people for control and not, so that they can take care of you. It's weird. The dynamic is very odd. And I see it so much.
Yeah, because the relationship is about like other things, not vulnerability and being open and being at the mercy of somebody's choices and you caring so much about them. And if they choose to like smoke every day and drink every day and take drugs every day and you love them, like, yeah, it's hard to watch that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so instead, I just won't go all in. I will stay permanently on the outskirts of feeling completely in love with someone because I can't bear the thought of losing them.
What's interesting about that is that there's other forms of death that are
Mhm.
not just physical,
Mhm.
right? There's emotional, there's mental. And I think that's what don't, some people don't pay attention to. Like, they're like, okay, well, me and your mom have been together for, I don't know, 50, 60 years. Like, yeah, but you guys hate each other guts for the like past 25 years.
Yeah.
So,
Would have been better if you weren't together.
exactly. So you've already had death of this relationship.
Mm.
But you have this toxicity or this attachment that I just don't want to be alone.
Mm.
But sometimes, it goes back to what I was saying about living. You need to be able to live, right, and love. And if this is not the person you love, then you need to be able to say, okay, I'm going to relinquish this so that I can live a life. It's not an excuse to be like, okay, I don't like you today. I'm just going to live. I'm going to leave. But it's also, you are called to live this life and to love, right? It's actually a commandment. It says, love that guy before, love God before anybody else, and then love your neighbors, right? So you're called to love. If you look at it from a spiritual context, you're actually called to love. But some people are just like, okay, well, I'm in this relationship. I don't want to be by myself. I don't want to be alone. And so I'm just going to stay here and be unhappy. Then you have the other side of people who relationships end and they're stuck in what was, right? And so how do you move forward with that, right? How do you do that? How do you push forward when you feel like this love of my life has now departed, right? It has died. So how do I have a rebirth in life when I feel like, my heart has been severed?
Well, my ex-husband became my best friend. He transformed. Our relationship expired, and I told him our friendship's going to expire if we don't end this marriage. And that was like a wake-up call for him because he knew that was true. We'd end up being bitter and resentful, but then it transformed, into this other love where we would talk about dating with each other and still do. So, I mean, that's one of the ways that it can transform is that you cannot end the relationship when the relationship doesn't work. That's something I think that's crazy about this culture. I stay connected to exes a lot.
I like the word that you use, and you've used it multiple times, transformation. Like, it's a transformation you're transforming into like another form, another level.
Yeah,
right?
we do this all the time.
Exactly. And I think that's what's interesting is that death is always looked at as something finite. It's never looked at an evolution to another level, right? You're evolving to something more.
Yeah, every
And
day.
every day.
You
every
end
day.
the way you were yesterday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we talk about this like a spiritual death, right? When you get baptized, you're dying to your old self. You're being reborn as something new, right?
Opportunity for new beginnings.
Exactly, for a new beginning. And so I like how I just like the word of transformation because to me it doesn't feel as finite as it ended, or divorce, or this person died, they transformed, they moved to another plane, the relationship has expired, but the friendship has transformed to something else, right? So I like the way that's used, because whether it's a crutch, whether it's a cushion, whatever helps you move forward, like the evolution, the evolving of this new beginning.
Yeah, I've said that to people before. Like when I write things online, like on Facebook, about somebody dying, I'll never say I'm so sorry they're dead. I always say, I hope, like, I wish you so much grace on yourself as you go through, as your person transforms, eh, I say transfer, like lives as an angel being, or like in their new angel body, or whatever that looks like. Um, because I believe that. Also, there's this meme that I love. It says transformation equals liberation plus loss.
Mm.
Nobody
Wow.
includes the loss part.
Yeah.
It's just liberation, because our country is like glitzy and glammy and we only have fun.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, with every transformation, there's loss.
Yeah.
Even losing like bad versions of ourselves is a loss. Yes, today I had a conversation with someone who talks about suicide way too much. And I said to her, you just don't want this life anymore, which I also don't want for you. Right. But like, that is the part that needs to end, not your life. So like, let's talk about the future and your potential and what we do want to show up for in life and what we do want from our lives, because she's just going in circles. Of course, she's unhappy. She's barking up all the wrong trees and upset that she's not getting anything from them. But then she tells me that she wants to end her life. And I'm like, no, it's the way that you're living your life that needs to end.
The way you're living is how you want.
Yes,
Is what
most
you
people
want to
that are
end.
suicidal want their life as it is to end.
Ugh.
Because
That
it needs
state.
to. Yeah.
That's so interesting. It's like that, this state, I'm unhappy in this state.
Yes, this life needs to end
So how can we get you from here
to the next
to
one.
the next, transform you from here to this next, so you don't necessarily want to, like, end your life, but you want to end this life that you've been living, this part. That's interesting.
I think that most suicides come from people getting stuck in, I don't want to live, and not continue this life this way, and then they perseverate around it. And then most suicides are contemplated within seconds. Did you know that? People don't think about it for very long. It's usually an impulsive decision. Mm-hmm. So if you perseverate for long enough and like, I don't want to live, 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 life isn't worth living, rather than this life isn't worth living the way I'm conducting it, then at the wrong moment with the right means, people make that choice. And I think it's a tragedy. It's a real tragedy, but I think when we're not allowed to talk about death, then we can't talk about wanting parts of ourselves to die, parts of ourselves that should die.
Yeah.
Like the part of me that likes high fructose corn syrup should die permanently and never come back, right?
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, we have parts that need to die that would be so much better off if they did. But if we can't even talk about dying in any way, then we can't talk about evolution and progress and moving forward by letting go of older versions of ourselves, and that is a death,
like a rebirth. So we think of things like the phoenix, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a perfect, symbolism of death and rebirth, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I think that is, it's just so important. What you're saying is like, I never really thought about it like this version. I mean, we talk about it, in church, like the old me should die, the new me is reborn, right? But we never break it down to be like, I don't like this version of me, right? And it doesn't mean I don't like me,
right?
That's like really part, like I don't like me, I don't like any of me, I don't like me when I was 5, I don't like me when I was you know what I mean, like, yeah. But I don't like this version of me, I don't like where I've been. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I think when you can break it down into that of like, this version of me I'm not too happy with, so what can I do to transform, to improve on the next version of me? How can I grow? How can I become better, as opposed to just being like, I just don't like me,
right? Well, and when you nail it down to like one specific, like this person that I'm talking about has been sober for like 9 or 10 months. But prior to that, I mean, she was actively suicidal when she was drinking with cirrhosis, right? Actively suicidal, right? Not deliberately, but she's not trying to stay alive. That's for sure, right? Mercifully, like keeping your life mercifully brief. And so that person could not continue that way because it was just madness, right? Plus her health was decompensating and she was in her 30s, like early 30s. So now she doesn't have cirrhosis anymore. She's healthy, but that version of her
It's dead.
is,
It's gone.
I hope, forever.
Yeah.
But then the other stuff that shows up that she might have been treating with the alcohol, that stuff is just, it's just a dysfunctional pattern. And then people believe that I think the pain overshadows it and makes you believe that there is no solution. And the suicide becomes the only solution. This is the way that I can solve all the pain at once, right? When you realize, oh no, it's, for example, I'm drinking alcohol and killing myself slowly. I try to pretend like that's not real. The more I drink, the more I can feel like it's not real. But then in the morning, I'm hungover, have a headache, have electrolyte issues, muscles are cramping, have to do it all over again to keep it going. Or I decide I don't want to live this way anymore. All right. This version of me has to die. And then all the potential that can be birthed from that. And then there's hope in that. But if you just decide, nope, there is no solution, I'm going to bury my possibilities, then suicide becomes an option, which is super tragic.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I appreciate it because I want to pinpoint on trauma because I feel like we're getting there. But thank you so much, Dr. Mimi.
You're welcome.
And we will close out. We thank you and stick around for the next episode.
The next episode. This is a great conversation.
Yay.
Great.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.